Watson. Take it away, Drew.
As you said, my name is Drew. I did this project for Dr. Reed's Chaucer class in spring of last year. Just out of curiosity, how many of you are familiar with Canterbury Tales? Most of us. Okay, cool. So I don't have to give much background. So this is the wife of Bath, and if you know anything about the scholarship surrounding Canterbury Tales, she is a pretty controversial character. There's a lot of debate over whether she is a prototype feminist or a misogynist. And those two seems like they would be pretty distinct, it would be pretty easy to tell, but it really isn't. So I have a smaller version of the poster that I'll pass around so you can see it a little better. All three iterations of the wife are sort of similar because whichever way you interpret her, you're looking at the same text. So she has a headscarf, a wide brim hat, a pleated cloak over her skirt, a broad, handsome face with a red hue, and a gap between her teeth. So I kept all of those consistent across each interpretation, just to really hammer home that it's all from the same text. The one on the right is the medieval feminist interpretation of the wife. The word feminist was not really coined until 1895 according to the Oxford English Dictionary, but of course its ideas were around prior to that time. The wife is very open and very bold with her speech in the Canterbury Tales. She is unashamed of who she is. So in this version of her eyes are open, she is looking towards the viewer, she holds her hands out to the viewer to be engaging with them. Her explanation of "are both things small," which is the most cited dialogue of hers to support the feminist interpretation of her, is behind her. And this opens with "tell me also." So this sort of opening indicates an open conversation. She is responding to somebody and she is opening the floor for an answer. And this dialogue is also, of course, about her sexuality. She is very open about her sexuality and she knows what she wants. A lot of critics, even if they support a feminist interpretation of her, kind of ignore or have a disdain for her sexuality. But that's really central to her feminism. She takes power in that. And she knows what her husbands want, so she's able to use her sexuality to get what she wants out of the marriage. She kind of topples the traditional marriage dynamics. Also in this dialogue, she is appealing to masculine reason. There's like little nuggets of misogynistic thought throughout it. Like she says that women cry if they don't get what they want. And even though she might not necessarily agree with this, she is relating to the misogynistic men by spreading these throughout her ideas. So that way she's saying, I know what you mean, so listen to me. So she's deliberately choosing her words to open a conversation here and have people listen to her, even if they might not think they agree with her. On the left is the medieval misogynistic version of the wife. She is eyes closed, hand to herself, more self-centered. When you compare the wife to actual medieval feminist thought, it might seem very obvious that Chaucer was being very satiric with her. Medieval feminists like Christine de Pizan were more about a moral support for women. They wouldn't really be focused on the sexual aspect because it was not even remotely in their ballpark at that point. So medieval readers might have immediately read this and been like, oh, this is way too out of here, absolutely satire. And the speech behind her is debated to be very stereotypical feminine speech. She gets off track, she uses intensifying adverbs, she rambles a lot, so much so that her prologue before she even gets into the story is so much longer than the story itself. So some people say that her bumbling speech and her contradicting words are mirroring Chaucer's misogyny. He has funneled all of that into the wife. So even though it's important to keep in mind medieval ideas, what medieval feminism would have looked like, it's really hard to ignore that we are modern readers and we are reading her with at least some aspect of a modern thought. So that's what the wife in the middle is. She is the modern feminist version of her. Her openness, her self-assurance, and the power that she finds in her own sexuality are very modern feminist ideas. The text behind her is a translated version of the same one on the medieval feminist side, and I've chosen to translate one from the Harvard Jeffrey Chaucer website. just to show that even if you're looking at the wife through a modern lens, it doesn't cheapen her character. The text is still the same ideas are there. And of course, in the middle we have Chaucer himself, because no matter how you read the wife, it's all his doing. And we can't ask him what he meant by her. There's no telling. So all three wives can exist at the same time. No matter what you think of her, she definitely has a lot to say. Any questions?
So, I feel like you're doing part English, part art here. What class was this for?
This was for Dr. Reed's Chaucer class, and it was a literature class. But the way that she does her final projects, she says, you can write an essay, or you can do any of these other things. So that's a really great way that she gets students to kind of get their creativity going.
Yeah. What is your intended major then?
English.
Okay.
Other questions for our speaker?
So Drew, what's your interpretation of the wife? Is it this middle one that's a combination of the others? Do you lean towards her being feminist, or that it's...
I'm very much a proponent of all interpretations are right. I think that it's really hard to nail her into one box just because there's so many different ways that you can go with the supported evidence. I do like the medieval feminist version of her, but I do see why that might be a little too far off for an actual medieval feminist train of thought.
Maybe I'm lacking in artistic interpretation here, but is the author in the middle with what looks like a mask of the wife? Is
Yes.
that more intended that obviously he could be any of the three personas, or maybe even more, I guess?
Mm-hmm. The idea with that was that he's behind her.
Mhm.
The wife is little more than one of Chaucer's masks, something that he has put himself into one way or another.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just appreciated that you mentioned the fact that interpretation seems to be generational, depending upon where you're reading it from, right? So I really appreciated that perspective.
Reverse presentism is something that Dr. Reed has nailed into us through so many literature courses, because we know we're taking our modern ideas and sticking them back into the past, and sometimes these terms didn't even exist back then. So who are we to say, oh, she was definitely a feminist?
Thank our speaker.